Hey y'all, you're listening to
Two Wives and a Spark.
As an interracial couple, we've learned a lot over the years, and we're committed to sparking conversations that build community and explore how race influences everything. Literally everything. So that's our focus for this podcast.
Because we believe that intentional conversations are vehicles for change. We've seen the power of them in our relationship over the years, and we know that when we really listen to each other and to ourselves, we see the truth in new and revealing ways.
I'm Leah.
And I'm Rachel.
You're listening to Two Wives and a Spark. Hey y'all, welcome back to episode 9, Two Wives and a Spark. I'm Leah.
And I'm Rachel.
And we are so excited to be with you this week. This week, we're going to be talking about how growing takes time, and you got to give yourself some space for it. We're going to jump into that topic this week. We're super excited to start off with some personal stories, and as Rachel shared last week, some professional ones as well.
Yeah. And, you know, this is a big episode for us, Leah.
It is.
Why is it
so big?
We're really excited / you know, it's a big moment for us to share like what the time and space has done for us these past 6 months.
Yeah, it's been definitely a season of change and growth and development. It has been a beautiful gift has been provided to our personal lives. Mm-hmm. And we're going to share that with each and every one of you. So turn up your speakers.
Get ready, y'all.
And get ready, because there's a secret coming. What is it, Rachel? What is it? Tell the people. They want to know. They got to know. They got to know.
So much, y'all. But the big exciting announcement for our family in this particular chapter is we're pregnant.
We're pregnant. We're having a baby.
We're growing our family, and it is so exciting. So exciting.
Talk about taking time and having space. There is no better way to understand growth than to literally be growing a family. And for you, Rachel, specifically growing a baby inside your womb.
Yes. Leah always tells people that are in our inner circle that the baby is what?
Living rent-free right now in Rachel's tummy. You know, because as a same-sex couple, people are always like, oh my God, you're pregnant. And then the second thing is, oh, who's pregnant?
Right.
Which is a fair question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I always have to add in, we're pregnant. Baby's currently living in Rachel's womb, rent-free.
Yes. And it has been a journey, y'all. It really has been one of the most beautiful journeys of my life, experiencing this pregnancy. And also what got us to getting pregnant was also a journey. So there's a lot to unpack here on the personal front.
Yes, there's a lot to celebrate and be joyful for and be thankful for in this particular moment. But getting here, it was not all roses and rainbows. It was not an easy, oopsies, we're pregnant. No, that definitely wasn't it. It was definitely a journey of growing up together and in some of those pitfalls and struggles and obstacles we were going to talk about further on in the season definitely came up during this time too. And we learned a lot about each other, about ourselves, and just about the journey.
Yeah. And so as we were reflecting on like what feels like the best way to ground us for this season, it really just felt like, growing through change, growth, because we're learning and living metaphorically, physically, literally so much about what our bodies and minds and spirits do when we have immense growth.
Mm-hmm. And I think with the growth too, there's so much that's out of your control, right? Mm-hmm. You are literally, for you right now, literally building a new human that is building all these organs. And literally, y'all, like every single day, there's something new that we're learning about this baby. Mm-hmm. And I think for many of us, when we think about growth, there's so much that's out of our control. Mm-hmm. That's a part of life, right? Is to grow up and develop. But I think one of the key things we were talking about when we were thinking about this fertility journey, and it's been a year-long journey, a lot of learning and poking and prodding and life changes that we've had to make in order to get to this point to celebrate that we're having a baby. But along that journey, we've talked a lot about how space is needed, taking time, as we talked about when we closed out season 1, to take space, to pause the noise, pause all the movement, and really make space for what's currently happening in your life, which is that you are growing and developing. And sometimes we can overlook that when we don't give ourselves an opportunity to take the space and to rest so that we can experience the actual growth, which is a beautiful gift. And sometimes growth is, and by sometimes I mean most of the time, growth is hard, and it's a challenge, and it's building a new muscle. You tell me this all the time. It's building a new muscle.
Stretching, literally, I think the thing that I've said the most in this pregnancy is like, I feel like my body is physically stretching like a rubber band every day. I didn't know I could stretch as much as my body currently can stretch. And it's like, I think what's interesting, and I've been thinking about this a lot, is society sometimes conditions us, or better yet, white supremacy culture sometimes conditions us to push through the stretch, like to rush it and to keep going, keep pushing, don't rest, don't pause. And I think what we learned as we were approaching the end of season 1, I think there was so much stretching. We were in the first trimester at that point, and I was exhausted. Yeah. Sitting in our little closet was so difficult for me. And I finally said, you know what? Because originally our plan was to have 12 episodes for each season. And we got to episode 6, 7, and we were I was in the heart of like nausea and really intense first trimester stuff. And I was just like, I can't do more of this. Like it would be a disservice to our listeners to push through when really what we need to do is practice what we're saying is so necessary and pause.
Yeah. It's interesting because we were listening to the last episode, and in it I was like, I sound so tired. Like I sound so, like my voice sounds like it's just so tired, needing some rest. So it's been really interesting to give ourselves an opportunity to take that space. It's also been really cool to be on the outside watching. I'm sure it's felt different for you on the inside, but the body has naturally made you rest. Yeah. It's made you pause, right?
Yes.
So I think the other thing about taking space is you give yourself an opportunity to listen to what your body is telling you it needs to do the growth.
Right.
Right. And in this case for you, it's what it needs to do the growth for this baby's development. And for me personally, I'm not growing a baby, but I need the pause so I can hear my body tell me, like, you need to rest more. You need to take on less. You need, but I'm not able to hear that when I'm just moving.
Right. And we're really incubating right now. It's like a phase where we have this, people say bun in the oven, and you're like, we are reflecting on our lives in such a unique way. We're thinking more about, I've never heard you think and talk as much as you have in this past 6 months about your own growth, your own habits, the kind of parent you want to be, the kind of, readiness you want to have when our little one comes out into the world. And so there's something that is so sacred about this time that also feels really metaphorical. Like if we took some of these skills and some of these lessons and applied them to other types of transformative growth in our world, and specifically around developing habits toward being anti-racist, doing racial justice work, racial equity work, because that work is stretching too.
Yeah, it's definitely stretching. I think when we think about it through that lens, right, through the racial lens or through the equity lens, there's something about that work in our society right now where you're either in there's multiple camps you can be in, but the things I think I see the most are like people are either visibly doing it, like outwardly trying to be more focused on their growth and sharing with the world how they're trying to grow, or people are internally doing it, right? Like really taking a step back, really trying to figure out like, where did I misstep? How did I miss that? What is it that I need to learn? What is it that I need to know? And regardless of how you're doing it, I think it requires some important pieces, right? And one of them is giving yourself space to fill your bucket, right? Fill your mind with new knowledge and new concepts and new information, and to grieve a part of yourself, right? Like when you realize, like I'm in grad school right now, and there's a lot I'm realizing about the academic mind. When you realize that you didn't know something, right? Depending on what type of learner you are, there are different moments you have. You have moments of like shame, like how did I not know that? You have moments of excitement, like, oh, I'm learning something new. You have moments of confusion because you're like, why is this so damn hard? And I think we have to give ourselves some space to grieve that, right? That identity that we had before we start learning something new and growing is really, really important. And I think regardless if you're doing that externally or internally, just having some practices for how you create space to give yourself an opportunity to grieve who you once knew, right? Yeah. And who you are becoming.
Right. We've been talking a lot about that, just kind of bouncing back to the parenting front, just about, thinking about there are so many layers of myself that feel distant, my former self, that like pre-pregnancy self. I'm like, man, I wonder if I'm ever going to go back to that thing, or if I'll ever be able to fit into those pants again. Like if this, and it's like we were just talking last weekend about how so much of this process is teaching us to let go, whether it's grieving or letting go or releasing attachment. I think there's so much to learn about ourselves, and when we give ourselves permission to let go of how things used to be and releasing that grip of like what once was the quote unquote right way. It just was. And now it's time for something new.
Yeah, because you're making space, right?
Yeah.
What we're learning right now is we're making space for this human being to grow. We're making space in our lives. We're decluttering some things. We're getting rid of some stuff that we're like, we've been holding on to that, but we really don't need it, which is only allowing us to then make space for something new.
Right.
And I think growth is very similar, right? When you again, I feel like I've said this on repeat, but when you give yourself some time and some space to really think about what you're shedding,
Yeah.
then it opens opportunities for so much more to come in. And I think that's such a true gift and the journey of growth for sure.
And so in terms of this episode, taking time and space, like that's what growth requires, is time and space. What have you felt like, just to kind of reflect together out loud?
Okay.
What has been helpful for you? And what do you think we've learned about time and space these past handful of months?
That's a good question. What have we learned about time and space these last few months?
And like what's necessary for us with growth?
Yeah, I think there are a couple lessons that I've learned. I think one, I think I've mentioned this in last season too, like we have these best practices for ourselves, right? We're like, oh, I know when I journal, I feel so much better, right? Yet I don't do the practice enough, right? So I don't take my journal out and reflect and give myself some space to just like write things down. And so then I become overwhelmed. So I think I've learned over these last few months, especially in this last month, the power of really taking care of myself so that I can take care of others. And I think that's becoming clearer for me as our family is getting bigger, right? Like if I, as a parent, I'm not taking care of myself and my needs, I'm not putting my mask on first, as they say, then how am I going to be able to provide for this family, for this child, not just provide like financially, right? But provide mentally, emotionally, physically. Because if my body is like, you're not helping us do better, then it's not going to give me what I need to then be an active and supportive wife or parent. So I think it's giving me some reality checks the last couple months to think about that. I've taken some space and time to really think about what type of parent I want to be. So I've been thinking a lot about my upbringing, my childhood, my experiences. And I think that's, again, creating some space for me to do some more healing. Like there are lots of things I've healed from, but there's still lots of things that I haven't because they haven't been in my face.
Yeah.
So I think the journey of bringing a human being into this world is opening some of those bags up for me.
I think about, as I was hearing you talk, I was realizing I didn't have an answer. Like right at the end, I was like, I don't know what my answer. This is interesting. But the first thing that just came to my mind after you finished was this metaphor of a fireplace, like a campfire. Like the first word that came to my mind was boundaries. What I have learned these past however many months, it's been 6 months in pregnancy at this point, but it's been how many months since we last talked to our Two Wives and a Spark crew, I guess.
Our last episode was in June.
July, August, September. Okay, so 3 to 4
We love doing
months.
our math problems on air.
Anyway.
Carry the 1 divided by 2.
Math is not our strength, nor is counting calendars, according to Leah. Okay.
We'll talk about that at the end of this episode. We'll just get an audience poll real quick, see how people count months.
But I have really had to practice boundaries have been a big learning curve for me, I would say, this past 5 years. Learning that boundaries are healthy, boundaries are helpful, boundaries are my friend. As a recovering people pleaser, like I didn't have a concept of boundaries for myself. I would just kind of be willing to drop everything for anybody at any point. to the point that it was like self-sacrificial, you know, it's like self-destructive when you're willing to put others so much before yourself that you're not taking care of yourself. So all that to say, that's been my growth edge these past 5 years. I would say like the past 2 years, I've really worked on it consistently, like setting boundaries and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And then in these past 6 months, it just got even sharper, you know, like protecting my energy, protecting my physical health. As we're navigating the pandemic, we traveled, you know, we've gone through so many waves of this pandemic together from like getting vaccinated and feeling like, okay, we're on the up and up to then the Delta variant. And, you know, all that has been through our pregnancy in some way, shape, or form. And so I think boundaries have been so important for me to understand the power of time and space, like what growth can happen when you have boundaries and this protection bubble around your time and space. Because otherwise, some unnecessary energy might get in there, some unnecessary impact. You know, there's all sorts of stuff that people unintentionally do that can impact us, especially when we're in such a sacred time like pregnancy. Like there's something that's so sacred to me about the act of bringing life into this world.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So yeah.
Well, to our audience, we hope that you all can share your insights and thoughts with us too around kind of lessons learned, ways that you're protecting your growth and allowing growth to happen.
Yeah.
Or being more conscious of the growth that is happening.
And time and space. Like, how do you protect your time and space? Because I think that would be, I think we could learn, you know, I feel like a work in progress, learning every day a little bit more about like how to do better and how to listen more.
Which is a part of growth, right? I mean, if we're really growing and changing and developing, then we should be having moments where we're learning how to do better, act better, know better, you know? Like, that's a part of the experience. And I think sometimes our stubbornness, our egos get in the way of that. And I think that's a signal, for me at least, that's a signal to me. Whenever my stubbornness or my ego gets in the way, it's a signal to me that I'm not making space for what's trying to be given to me, which is this idea of learning something new or growing. Or I think every interaction you have, positive, negative, has an opportunity for growth. And sometimes we shut them down because we're like, I can't believe you just did or said or whatever. And so it's like shut down. I don't know if people watch Ted Lasso, and I'm going to misquote this completely.
I was just thinking about this
summarize
one.
it. But, you know, in this latest episode, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it, even though not really, because I'm a totally botch how I quote this. But anyway, an article was written about him having anxiety, and he didn't share it himself with the players. The journalist who wrote the article ended up exposing, you know, that he had suffered a panic attack. And
this is a major spoiler.
Spoiler alert! Don't listen no more. Pause.
I thought you were just gonna share the quote. Okay, go.
And so, well, that's what I'm trying to like get the quote ready. So I have to back it up a little bit. So when he speaks to the players, you know, he says to them, "I had a choice. I could have chosen to share with you all the truth of what happened or to hide it from you guys. And I chose the latter, right? I chose to hide it from you guys. And in doing that, I missed an opportunity to learn, because had I shared it with you all, I would have learned something from how you reacted to it or what you shared with me. And I thought that was such a, and still you should watch the episode because I just didn't know no justice at all. But I just thought it was a beautiful way of thinking about when things are really hard. There's always an opportunity to learn in the hardness. Right? And that's actually is really through the hardness is where the truest moments of growth happen for all of us. Like I think if anyone who's listening right now thinks about the moments when you've grown the most, like when you're like, I'm never going to forget that growth moment. I would bet that it was probably through a hard time.
It stretched you.
It stretched you.
Yeah.
It stretched you.
It's not always comfortable. It's not always easy. It's funny that you chose that quote, because the quote I was thinking of was somebody was approaching him and you could tell this person was coming at him with like some negative feedback. And I wish, I'm going to botch this too, but so we both need to go back and listen. Or you all, if you watch Ted Lasso, let us know if you know what we're talking about in these two quotes. But but the person approaches him. It was clearly like some negative energy or some like confronting energy. And he said, how can I learn from this? Or something like that. He like his entry into the conversation was, you know, it's clear that this person's frustrated. How can I How can I learn from this? Help me learn from this. It was just such a beautiful framing of how you can approach hard things. Yeah. So yeah, two for those who are interested in checking out the season finale of Ted Lasso. It was either that episode. I think they're both in that episode, right?
I think so too.
Yeah.
But obviously, our summary or things is just watch all the seasons except one episode. But that's not neither here nor there. Tangent.
So that's the beautiful thing about this is we're here with y'all having this conversation. And while we know you are probably not growing a baby, however, if you are, we want to hear from you because that would be really fun. But most of us may not be growing a baby inside of you, but you've probably had a lot of things that have impacted you or changed you in this past year. Just starting with the pandemic alone, there are things that have forced change upon us that have probably stretched you. So we would love to hear what growth you've noticed this past year and what you've learned about yourself, if you're down to share.
I like that. I like that question a lot. Share it with us on the gram. Let us know your thoughts and how what growth opportunities you've had this year or that you foresee coming. Because we would love to just be in community with you and talk through those with our audience.
Yeah. And so that, we talked a lot about on the personal front, the bringing a human into the world in this episode. That's clearly some top of heart and mind news that we're really excited to share with you all. But we did commit to talking both personally and professionally in each episode because we do this work for a living. So let's turn a corner if you're down to talk about, some growth is super visible and some growth is not. And a lot of the work when we're talking about having conversations about race and doing anti-racism work, racial equity work, a lot of that work that the growth is invisible. It's on the inside, It's an internal journey where most likely only the individual feels and experiences it, right? And so let's dig into there and talk about what we've learned about the time and space that are necessary on that front, on the professional front.
Coming with the juicy questions, Rachel. But for me right now, especially professionally, I'm thinking a lot about, this is my 12th year in education, 11th, 12th year in education. And it's my 4th school across 2 states. So I've been reflecting a lot about that, like, what types of roles am I attracted to, things of that nature, and what have I learned in these different positions. And I think I'm doing similar work, right, that I've been doing since I was in my early 20s, just with different titles. And I think the thing that I'm becoming more and more aware of is there's always an opportunity to, in each role, I'm growing, right, whether that just be because my age is getting higher or whatever, but I'm changing. So there's always, even if I'm dealing with, let me give a clearer example, right? Like I've dealt with parent conflicts more than half of my career. Mediations, restorative circles, more than half of my career. Yet I still learn every single time I do one. And the reason being is because we are working with humans, right? And so human beings have an opportunity, I think, to allow us to not be super technical, but be relational. And when you're in relationship across difference with people, and professionally speaking, it gives you an opportunity to grow together and to see each other's potential for growth and opportunities for growth. So I think for me professionally, while I may still be doing similar things that I've been doing in every role that I've had, I continue to find myself in a learning space. I'm more confident in what I'm doing because I've been doing it for a while, but doesn't overshadow my growth, my opportunity to grow, every single time, my moment to grow. It doesn't overshadow that. So I think that's been really eye-opening to just take time and reflect and take the space on reflecting on that has been really helpful. I think, too, coming back to school, I mean, we were open last year, too, but having all of our students on campus this year and all of our families, what I'm learning, too, people grew in a space to protect themselves. And now we're coming back to community, coming back to sharing space, coming back to norms, coming back to being together. And it's like, it doesn't matter how many years you've worked in education. This is still some new stuff, right? And so learning how to navigate the different social skills that people have either forgotten how to use or never had anyway, and now it's just heightened. That has been a true growth for me this year in terms of learning, like, are you patient enough for this, right? Are you equipped? enough. Yeah, you've been doing this for this amount of years, but do you have the tools to be able to hold space in a way that people in front of you need you to do right now, which is different than how you did it 5 years ago, or,
Right.
Because the world is different.
Right. Yeah, just the way, the compound stressors, the collective trauma of navigating a pandemic together. To your point, I hadn't thought about it that way, but people, for a year and a half, everybody learned to flex this like self-preservation muscle. That's like,
yeah, because we didn't know it was coming.
We're individual, we're focused on my family, put my mask on, keep myself safe. Anybody could die. Like there was so much stress and trauma from,
and so much unknown.
Yes, so much unknown.
Yeah.
And so when you practice flexing that muscle for a literal year and a half without human contact in the way that school has been for most people's entire lives, like without that one, because schools are really kind of the center of the ecosystem of the human experience, and a lot of like,
and of socialization. Like you learn how to socialize, interact with other people. Like school is the hub of where you learn or don't learn many of those skills.
True.
Like,
and so you think about the time and what time and space it did for some people during the pandemic and what it didn't do for others. Some folks don't have the privilege of time and space, to be honest. And there's like that's a whole other layer of this conversation, which is how much of a privilege it can be to have time and space to process and to get off the grid and to really reflect. Like I'm so clear how privileged that is of a thing to say. And so when we think about how much growth can happen for people, especially relative to conversations about race and hard things and cultural differences on top of these compound stressors that they're already, like that we're asking a lot of people to stretch already stretched muscles that are already really, really sore because we're still navigating a pandemic. And so I think about, how important it is sometimes, and helpful for me is just to name that, to call out the water that we're swimming in. Like if it feels really hard right now, it's for a lot of reasons. It is, It
is. I appreciate you for calling out that, because I was thinking about it this whole time. Like time and space is a privileged concept. Both of them are privileged concepts. And we have a really good friend, Malika, shout out to Malika, who has taught us like the power of how you look at time. Right? So like, you and I can get off the grid for a week when I have a break from work and go to the beach, right? And that's how we choose to use the time, because we don't have to worry about, work or whatever. That is privileged. But we also, as she shared, her example is always in the back of my mind whenever I think about like this idea of time being a privileged thing. But she shared with us once, like, you can take time with yourself when you're doing something as simple as brushing your teeth, right? Because how you do that action, what time and energy you put into that action, it can be given yourself some stuff back, right?
Yeah.
And so I do think it is privileged to think about it the way that I think we are holding it in our minds when we're like, we can actually take a pause and do some reflecting and do that. But there's opportunity if we all look at things differently about like, how much time do I have to give to that? It may not be 3 days. It might be 15 minutes.
Right.
But just looking at the ways in which we use time and how we have it.
I
think is important.
That's true. It's always a helpful reframe and to think about. It's like a kaleidoscope, when you think there's so much nuance to this conversation and so many ways you can shift the lens. But I think
either way, it makes a beautiful piece of art. All
it
the
does.
pieces. When you think about turning a kaleidoscope, I used to love those when I was a kid. But when you think about how you turn it, it creates another piece of art.
Yeah. So to recap, your professional takeaways around growth and how time and space have helped you is you've learned a lot about the impact of the pandemic and how that's caused people to show up differently this year. You've also learned that you are constantly learning. Like there's never a stagnant version of you professionally, because even though you've been in the game for over a decade, you still have something to learn every time.
Oh, yeah. I think working with kids will, if that doesn't kick you in the butt every day and tell you like, oh, you thought you had that down? As soon as you get comfortable, right? So I think the biggest thing for me with growth is there's always something new to learn, right? Because there's, to your point, there's always new water we're swimming in.
Yeah.
And I might, meet a parent who's swimming in similar water as me. And so that might be a little bit of an easier area to go to But then I might have a parent who I'm like, I've never experienced this before at all, right? Or a kid, I've never experienced this at all. So there's always an opportunity, I think, as a learner, when I put myself in the learner seat, what I find myself doing more in that regard is growing, right?
Yeah.
Versus staying in like the zone of comfort,
Yeah.
which is easy to do, especially when, to your point, you have all these stressors, right? When
Right.
it's like, yeah, but the world's too stressful for me to take on something new.
Yeah.
I've found professionally, whether I want to take it on or not, it happens.
Yeah.
And so when I do the practices that we're talking about now, right, of taking time, taking space, letting myself rejuvenate, letting myself get, back in alignment with myself, then I show up way better for that growth experience.
Yeah.
When I'm not doing any of those things, the growth experience is still happening. It's just dragging my ass along, right? It's like, come on, bitch, let's go. Like, excuse the language, but like, I'm still going into it, but then I'm not able to experience the growth in a way that is, what's the word here? I am not able to experience the growth so outwardly, right? Like, or even inwardly. I guess inwardly is intrinsically.
Expansively? Or...
Expansively. Somebody insert the word there for me. But yeah, I'm not able to, there's like a feeling you get, for me at least, when I am in a state of deep growth. Even if it's not deep, like when I'm in a state of growing and just being in a new opportunity, experience, whatever,
Yeah.
I feel it.
Yeah. It's like transformative.
Yeah, it's transformative. But when I'm not aligned with myself, I don't have the, like I just said, I know it's happening, but I feel like I'm just getting pulled along for it. I don't feel like I'm transforming from it or adding to my toolkit from it, or
Right.
I feel like I'm just getting pulled through it. Like this pandemic, right? Like some of it I was like, okay, we're just, at the beginning it was like, okay, we got to do what's best for kids. We're going to be online. We're going to have to make this work, right? Like, and I was ready for that growth. And then a year and a half went by.
Right.
And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to survive. So
Yeah.
to your point, I think when the stressors are super heightened and super high, it's harder to take the space and the time to really experience let the of growth go through you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's something there about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs too, right? Just like basic, even if we know the power of some time and space, even if it's while we're brushing our teeth, if we have practices of intentional reflection, like, why is my stomach hurt right now? Why do I have a headache? Like, what is, like, let me pause for a second and check in with my body. Or let me think about, have I been more snappy and attitude more recently? Have I exercised? Like, what? Let me just do a quick scan with myself to see if any of these symptoms might be leading to me not feeling like my basic needs are like, I just need that foundational. I know there's too many stressors impacting me, so it would be hard for me to imagine thinking clearly about all the higher levels of self-actualization, when you're just trying to get through,
That's
right?
a good reminder, yeah.
Because I think there is, sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves, but I think the power of time and space can actually help us be more aware of our current state. Even if we're clear, like, I'm not at the place I want to be, but I know that I'm here. And my body will fight me if I try to grow too fast or too soon, or I try to push myself. It's like people who go to the gym every day and who, work out super hard and are super sore every day and never take a break. And it's like, okay, cool. But at some point you got to rest. Like, if your muscles are telling you, like, I need a break, I need, our muscles need rest. And so I think we can overexert ourselves too. So I think that it's such a delicate dance of finding that balance. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah.
And
That's
I think
a good reminder.
For me, I would just say, because facilitating conversations about bias and race is like a part of my get down, what I do every week with clients and in this world, I think a lot about just on the professional front, whether you all think of this as professional, like, I want to also preface that, like, this may not be more a professional. It might, for some people, this is community work on the weekends. Like, it doesn't have to always be professionally, but this just happens to be what I do for a living. So for me, when I think about this work and what I've learned about growth as a facilitator and as a practitioner doing this work, is that it never gets easy, but it gets less hard. And that's kind of the connection to the exercising muscles. Like, for people who exercise, you never get to a place where you don't have to exercise anymore because your muscles are so in shape. Like you always have to keep going to keep your strengthening up. And I feel that way about being a facilitator and a practitioner of this work, because we're working with human beings who are dynamic, constantly changing. And so what one conversation one week might look like when I'm facilitating a seminar on unconscious bias and microaggressions, what it might look like one week looks entirely different with a different group of people. And I think there's just my biggest lesson about growth and time and space has really been to recognize that when you give yourself the time to reflect and unpack, like what worked, what didn't, what would I do differently next time? How can I be better? How can I get feedback? How can I learn and listen? The muscle gets a little bit stronger each time for me, but it never gets easy. It just gets less hard.
Yeah, and I think, growth in general doesn't signal that life is getting easier.
Right.
As kids, I think we're always like, I can't wait to be a grown up, because when I'm a grown up, in your kid mind, it's going to be easier. Nobody can tell you what to do, all these other things. But with growth just comes more opportunity.
Yeah.
I think the more you grow, the more aware you are of the world around you, the more aware you are of that experience that's helping you grow. And then there's more space to just keep learning. So I think growth and learning go hand in hand for sure.
For sure. Yeah. So I think we could put a pin in it for now for this episode. I think we've got through a lot of territory here. We talked about professional, personal growth. We talked about growing a human. We talked about growth as a muscle and how, we just got to keep learning to flex it and know the power that comes with taking those pauses too.
And the power of just learning where you have time. And where you have an opportunity to have some space so that you can give yourself opportunity to reflect and to rejuvenate and to notice when you're growing. I think I'll leave it at this point about not having that space is we sometimes miss our moment of growth.
Right.
Like we miss this beautiful thing that happened because we didn't make time or space for it. And we got to this, next thing. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm glad I'm here, but I totally missed the journey.
Yeah.
Right?
I was pushing so hard. I was trying to get to here. I forgot to see and notice and be present
and be
with
present
that
for
growth.
it. And that's a part of, the reality of it is in our country, right? We're in this rat race. That's a part of white supremacy for sure, right? Is to each try to, run up the ladder to get what we need to survive, quote unquote, across all these different expectations of the world around us. But I think that is a part of what keeps us in this rat race is not taking the time to humanize the natural experiences that we're going through. Right. The natural experience of growth and then enjoying the steps of it and being present in it and letting our mind transform us so that when we get to the next level, we're like, ooh, that was hard, but that felt like it gives your energy something. Right.
Right.
And we miss that because we're trained to get to the next stop, get to the next stop, get to the next stop. We're not trained to take time and space and reflect and find the good in the hard. Right. We're not trained to do that. So.
Until we are. I think that's the power of this conversation. Like, I do feel like I'm glad that we're ending on this note because it is actually a sign of resistance and radical transformation, I believe, when you choose to resist the white supremacy conditioning and you choose to pause, you choose to rest, you choose to hold up the mirror. I think that is actually a very beautiful act of resistance toward the conditioning that you just talked about.
Yeah. And it's a new skill. It's a new condition. It takes a lot of practice.
A lot of practice.
And we'll talk a little bit more in this season around while you're doing that new practice, the people around you. Right?
Yes.
And that'll be an episode for sure. And the layers of the things you've learned how to do and how hard it is to sometimes shed those things. So
yeah,
more to come. Yeah,
we got a lot cooked up for y'all. And we have 7 more layers of this conversation to kind of peel away with y'all, and we can't wait to hear what each of these little nuggets spark for you.
Yeah, thanks for joining our brains as we and our hearts. As we just kind of let it riff off of each other and flow with the audience. We can't wait to hear from you all and to see what this sparked for you, what connections you made, what ideas you have, what thoughts it made you think of, and anything that you would like for us to clarify. We are speaking some of the things we've thought about ahead of time, but a lot of this, the beauty of this podcast is a lot of it's coming out naturally in the moment. So if there's I had a couple half-baked thoughts in there for sure that I'll probably want to go back to throughout the season. But if there was something that stood out to you and you're like, ooh, let's talk more about that, please let us know.
For sure. Yeah, let us know where you want to kind of double click and things we can circle back to, because we're really curious to hear your experiences and your questions and your thoughts. So let's keep the conversation going.
Yes, yes. Sending y'all love and light. We will see you next week. Or talk to you next week.
Well, I hope we see some of y'all. You can send us video, audio. We got you.
Yeah.
We'll hopefully hear from y'all.
Yes.
All right, y'all.
All right.
Talk soon. Thanks for joining us today, y'all. We'd love to stay connected on Instagram and Facebook, so you can find us at 2 Wives and a Spark, all spelled out.
If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend so we can keep the sparks of connection going. If you want access to our episodes as soon as they drop, click that subscribe button. Every rating and review helps others find us, so thank you in advance for letting us know what you think.
And special shout out to Journey Girl Magic Productions.
I'm Leah.
And I'm Rachel.
Thank you for listening to 2 Wives and a Spark.